The buys can come at a funny time, and especially when you're on a momentum roll like the Canberra Raiders, and it can take a little bit of the sting and the rhythm out of what you'd been doing so well. And some teams have had all their buys. Raiders have only just had their first buy. So, again, the season and the ladder isn't quite an accurate reflection of this premiership competition at the moment.
No, they've had to plough through 14 weeks straight. And we spoke about the amount of travel that they had to do at the start of the season. So they've had a tough...
As tough as anyone.
3.5 months. Yeah. They've had a tough 3.5 months being on. And as you said, Kev, they get 5 days off. Everything's a bit foreign. But they came out and performed in the first half. And like happens with most sides, consistency and the ability to just keep going and just, put in 80-minute performances week in, week out, week in, week out. It gets hard.
They were probably a little bit guilty of maybe just putting the queue on the rack today because, at 16-0 at half-time, they were in a comfortable position and they looked... It certainly can. And, a lot of viewers at home would be like, well, hang on, you're a professional. And they would have been saying all the right things in the half-time break. Their coach, Ricky Stewart, have been drilling into it. The job isn't done, but mentally, you check out by 1%. And you've got players like Jerome Luai and Feyenoord that came on off the bench, who I thought was amazing. He really changed that point of attack. He's such a tricky individual to deal with, just on the bye and that repetition, that continuous flow of football, that regimented approach. It's week by week by week. Sometimes some teams do struggle, but where they will gain the benefit is later on down the track. They've got a couple more buys to come.
Yeah.
And look, let's make no mistake, the Raiders are heading to play games of football in September. And that is going to be so vital. Those 3 buys at the back end of the season, that's where they'll reap the rewards for their buy. And maybe, pulling back for 5 days, this is a new situation for this particular Canberra Raiders team. We spoke about how it's a new group, so dealing with 5 days off, it sounds like a dream and paradise, but it can be difficult to navigate, especially for those younger outside backs.
Yeah, certainly. And my work in the NRL, all good performance stuff, coaches will tell you after 3 days you start to lose your physical conditioning. So
that
quickly, yeah.
Jesus,
from peak, from peak fitness to So and 5 days off, you want your players to rest and recover and just lead a bit of a normal life for 2 or 3 days at least anyway. So, look, you just got to win this time of the year, haven't you? If you're in the Raiders situation.
Yep.
They're playing well. They've got to get through Origin.
Find a way to win.
Find a way to win, which they did.
Yeah, James Tedesco said the other night, when they beat Newcastle, and he said, well, we've played much better than that and lost.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. The sides that you just have an off night. But when we're talking about the Raiders, who were 16-0 up, Jimmy, to your point, you drop that intensity by a percentage. Good players on the other side can see it.
They sense it.
Oh, you can feel it.
Yeah, you get
and you have a word to your teammates to go, these blokes are checked out.
Because West Tigers are hungry. Like they're
desperate.
They're
desperate. And you know what? The greatest thing about this game is that the Raiders aren't going to look back at this game at all throughout this season, but it had the potential to. If the Tigers had nabbed it at the end there, they would have looked back and gone, that was the one that got away, and that 2 points, who knows where that puts them on the ladder and the difference that they can make. The Raiders now, they completely almost move on from this game and it'll just be part of the season snapshot. It's not going to be a focus point whatsoever.
Let's give the Tigers a bit of credit too. They changed the way they played in the second half. They moved the ball and they got great skill and speed on their edges, which they, usually there are a couple of try-saving tackles there.
They went within a whisker.
Jerome
Buller had scored.
Well, yeah, and I reckon if he had got it on the line, he went awfully close. It probably would have been pulled back for a double movement, but he got out of that tackle. He's got an uncanny ability to get out of tackles. Jerome Buller stepped out of 2 of them, so it was Kyo Weeks in the end that made the stop. And they were coming to get him, and the Raiders were just hanging on.
He was close. Little forward pass.
Coach Marshall will take a lot out of that last 40 minutes there. Ideally, you bottle that desperation up from the opening exchanges, which can be a difficult style of football to play, but I think it's a style that suits the West Tigers and their personnel. I don't think there's much point in them playing within themselves. No. I think when they play a desperate style of football...
With no fear football.
With no fear, with no almost, not risk-free or inconsequential, but that exactly what we saw in the second half, because they've got very skillful players.
Yeah.
They're
not utilising them.
And it threatens oppositions. With Stafford Toe and his tackle-breaking ability,
Yep.
Jerome Bullet injecting himself into the game. If the Tigers had played with that mentality, that attitude, that plan for the full 80 minutes, I think we may have looked at a different scoreline today.
Well, that's
They
how
looked a
Benji Marshall was as a player.
Yeah, they looked a bit stilted. And like in the first half, they were just a little bit one out. There was no rhythm. There was no moving together. There was no threat to the Canberra defence. And Canberra's defence was very good, only because the Tigers had, a good block of possession in that opening 12 minutes, basically. And then they had another big block of possession just before the halftime break. But they couldn't do anything with it because their attack lacked any rhythm. Jerome wasn't really providing much. Heath Mason was running well, but running one out. And they're a much more dangerous outfit than that. And I agree with Jim and Kevy. They've got to use, if you've got players in your team that can break defensive lines,
Let him go.
give them the ball.
Latu Fayenu, when he came on, he changed the whole way the Tigers were playing. He freed up all of their strike players.
All the edges became alive.
Yeah, and so maybe he's the option.
Yeah,
for
I know that. I know they've re-signed Heath Mason, but I think next week, if you're in the staff, your 6 and 7 is the one that finished the game.
They looked great together.
They did combine exceptionally well together.
He's just running and busting tackles at will there. Like no one could sort of handle him. His passing game is very good as well. Select.
He holds that ball too far, which
deception with the ball in hand, which holds the defensive line up. So
he's unpredictable.
Yeah.
And when you're a big middle forward and you're tying in, you can. With fatigue sets in, which probably helped them, and maybe that's why Marshall had him on the bench, because he knew fatigue would play a factor today. But when you're fatigued and you're moving up and you track the ball and your eyes go, or you make wrong decisions, and that's what frees up space on the edge.
Well, our KFC FLG MVP, as voted by the fans, Big Josh Papali'i, another big input from Big Papa, and he's been like this all season, but just the way he goes at the game. Look at him setting up his captain there. Gold star for Big Papa.
He was fantastic tonight. Made more runs than any other Canberra player. And his defence, I thought his defence tonight was terrific. He was 32 tackles. He missed one tackle, and that was right at the end, just before he came off the field and Tom Starling went on. Fanua Bole just dropped the shoulder into him and knocked him backwards. But other than that, he was rock solid around the middle.
How good is that? The aggressive nature of Josh Papali'i there to force his team a goal line dropout, and you contrast that with the delicate nature of those hands that he laid on that try for Joey Tarpany.
Yeah. Well, I noticed Ricky got him on pretty early in that second half when the tide started to swing, and he got him on with 5 or 6 minutes into that second half, and he nearly played the full half out. I think he got replaced with about 3 minutes to go. So it's a real luxury for the Raiders, is it, to have the guy like Josh in his team, can play the big minutes, the extended minutes, or he can play the power game as well, come on in short bursts and just be that explosive middle forward. It's a real luxury that the Raiders have got. Those two middle forwards, him and Tarpany, excellent players for the Raiders, and part of the reason they got out to that 16-0 start was those two middle forwards and the work they did through the middle.
Josh has had an amazing season so far, and obviously we saw all the fanfare for his game becoming the most capped Raider of all time, and he loves being part of that green machine. He's been very open, saying this will be his last season in Canberra, so he's going to hit the open market after this year. If you are Josh Papali'i, where are you looking, and what clubs should be looking at someone like a Josh Papali'i?
Well, I think most of them would have a little sneaky look over the fence, I would have thought. I thought he wasn't going to play on next year. He wants to play on,
He wants to play on. He thinks he's got more football, and certainly his track record this year suggests he's got great footy.
What are we saying, that he won't be at the Raiders?
Will not be at the Raiders.
Right.
Yep.
But he wants to play on?
He wants to play on.
OK, I didn't know that. That's news.
Oh, better get on that
good, doesn't it?
Penrith board members.
There you go.